My family cut me off when I refused a spot in our family business. "No one will hire you after this," my dad sneered. 2 years later, my startup bought out his company. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Cold winters, chicken wings, and family-run businesses on every block. Ours was Leeds and Daughters, a long-standing home renovation company that bore our last name and, apparently, our destiny too. My grandfather built it, my dad expanded it, and everyone assumed I'd run it someday. The Daughters in the name was meant to be inclusive, a legacy move that looked progressive on paper. But in practice, it was always Daryl's company, and I was just an accessory. My whole life was preparation for it. Every summer break, I was on site or in the office, organizing client files, hauling materials, painting walls. At the time, I didn't hate it. It was a skill, and I was good at it. But good at something doesn't mean it's your purpose. In college, I double majored in architecture and business at Cornell. My professors talked about climate change, about sustainable housing models, and how outdated most construction companies were. I became obsessed with the idea of designing small, green, affordable homes. The kind single moms or retired veterans could actually buy. The kind that didn't cost a lifetime of debt. By senior year, I had plans for a prototype and a pitch deck that I showed to a startup incubator in Syracuse. They accepted me. I remember the exact night I told my family I wouldn't be taking the exec in training position my dad had waiting for me. We were at our usual Friday dinner. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, dad at the head of the table, mom at his right, my younger sister Talia next to me scrolling through her phone. "I'm not coming into the business," I said, not looking at anyone, just slicing into my food. "I'm starting something on my own." The silence that followed was like a crack in the room. Even Talia looked up. "You're kidding," Dad said flatly. When I didn't respond, his tone sharpened. "Nora, we've planned this for years." "What are you talking about?" "I have a real opportunity. Sustainable modular housing. I've got a team and a spot in an incubator." "Modular what?" "Are you hearing this?" He looked at my mom, then back to me. "You're going to walk away from guaranteed income and take a chance on some hippie project?" "It's not a hippie project. It's smart. It's scalable. It's the future. You want to be broke in 6 months? You think people will line up to hire you after you slap your father in the face like this?" I remember gripping my fork hard. "I'm not slapping you in the face. I'm just not following your path." That was the end of it, more or less. No yelling. Just finality. 2 weeks later, my company laptop was disabled remotely. My health insurance stopped. A notice came in the mail: the leased car in my name, through the company, was to be returned. They didn't even tell me to my face. I moved into a rundown 2-bedroom in Syracuse with 2 other women from the incubator program. We pooled our food budget, lived off ramen and instant coffee, and spent nights soldering wires, sketching frame designs, and reworking presentations for VCs who never called back. We called the startup Haven Build. It was slow. Painfully slow. I taught myself to code just enough to build a basic demo for our virtual home tours. One of our first investors ghosted us 3 days before signing. My co-founder dropped out when she got a real job. My savings dwindled. I cried more than I want to admit. I didn't hear from my family, not once. But eventually, things shifted. A nonprofit in Utica reached out after reading a blog I wrote about housing insecurity. They gave us a chance, just one home. We built it, fast and cheap but beautiful. The pictures went viral. We got local news coverage. Then came the contract with a small housing collective in Vermont, 8 homes. And then a meeting with a state rep about a green housing grant. We won it. Within 2 years, Haven Build had designed and delivered over 30 modular homes in upstate New York and Vermont, with more projects lined up. We weren't profitable yet, but we were real. Solid. Scalable. And then, out of the blue, I got a call. "Henry Ward. My dad's right-hand man since the 90s. He sounded tired. I probably shouldn't be calling, he said. But, things aren't great here. Apparently, Leeds and Daughters had hit rocky ground. They overextended on luxury renovations right as the housing market tightened. A lawsuit over a failed HVAC install bled them dry. They were drowning in debt, and to top it off, they'd lost a major commercial contract that accounted for 40% of their yearly revenue. I didn't know how to feel. Henry asked if I'd be interested in consulting. But I didn't consult. I bought. My lawyers made sure it was clean. We didn't use Havenbuild's name directly in the paperwork until the deal was sealed. But when the ink dried, I officially owned 80% of Leeds and Daughters. I didn't go in with cameras or a smug grin. I wore the same jeans and jacket I'd worn in the field with my crew, and I walked into that office just like I had as a teenager, except this time, it was mine. My father didn't look up when I entered. He was chewing out a junior project manager. He froze when he saw me. "You?" he said, barely a whisper. "I'm the buyer," I said simply. He didn't say another word. Just sat back in his chair and stared at the floor like someone had pulled it out from under him. I offered him a retirement deal, fair, above market. He declined at first. Then the board overruled him. Talia quit the next day. She sent me a message, "You didn't deserve what they did to you. I'm proud of you. I just can't stay there." My mom texted me, "Your grandfather would be proud." I didn't respond. We kept 5 core staff. Everyone else had to re-interview for their jobs. We pivoted the company fully into green construction within 6 months. The Leeds and Daughters name would be phased out by the end of the fiscal year. And now? Now I get calls. My mom, suddenly cheerful, wants to drop by the office. My dad's cousin, who didn't talk to me for 2 years, sent me an email with a subject line, "Heard the news. Congrats. Hey, are you hiring?" Even Talia circled back recently, asking if she could join our Vermont team. I haven't answered her yet. Because the truth is, I don't know if I'm ready. So that's where I'm at now. Walking through the halls of what used to be my dad's kingdom, I still feel a strange kind of tension in my chest. It's not satisfaction, exactly. Not revenge either, though I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel a little vindicating. It's more like grief. Grief for the version of my life that never got to happen. Grief for a family I thought would cheer me on instead of cutting me off. And yet, I also feel pride. Deep, grounded pride, not just for what I built, but for how I survived. After the acquisition, I didn't change everything overnight. I wanted to understand what still worked at Leeds and Daughters and what didn't. I shadowed crews, sat in on client meetings, and even crawled under a crawlspace in a snowstorm when we found a burst pipe during a foundation inspection. Some of the older contractors warmed to me quickly. Others, not so much. A few whispered things like "Daddy's girl bought her way in" behind my back. That stung. Until one day, a guy named Marcus, one of the few people who'd been at Leeds longer than my dad, saw me hauling lumber off a flatbed by myself after a delivery driver left it blocking the road. He just said, "All right. You're real. You're in." And that was it. I didn't need a ribbon cutting. That one comment meant more than any handshake. Meanwhile, Havenbuild kept growing. We signed with a veterans housing nonprofit in Scroon Lake. We partnered with an upstate college for an apprenticeship program in green construction. Every time we finalized a new design, I thought of those nights in the incubator apartment, cold fingers, dry ramen, and coffee that tasted like mud. But of course, the moment people smell success, their tone changes. I got a text from my dad's old friend Ron, "You've always had it in you, Nora." Daryl just didn't see it. "Hey, would love to reconnect over lunch." My mother, who had stayed largely silent for years, suddenly wanted to stop by the new office just to say hi. She came. Unannounced. I was in the middle of reviewing architectural mock-ups when my assistant knocked. There's a Serena Leeds here?" She stood in the hallway in her usual quilted coat, holding a paper bag from the bakery around the corner. It used to be our Saturday ritual, cinnamon rolls and lattes when I was still in high school. I just wanted to see you, she said, a little too brightly. I thought maybe we could talk. I didn't have the energy for a dramatic confrontation, so I nodded and waved her into the break room. She handed me the bag. Still your favorite? I nodded. Thanks. She sat across from me like it was a casual catch-up. Like we hadn't gone years without a word. I saw the newspaper article, she said. You looked beautiful in that photo. I raised an eyebrow. The one where I'm standing on a construction site with wind in my face and a helmet on? She smiled faintly. You looked strong. For a minute, we sat there quietly. Then she sighed. Your father's not well. I don't mean sick, I just mean, off. Since everything happened. I didn't respond. He doesn't talk about the company anymore. Or you. It's like it never existed. But he watches your interviews on YouTube. Thinks I don't know. That caught me off guard. I'm not here to guilt you, she added quickly. I wanted to say I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you when I should have. My jaw clenched. It would have been so easy to soften. To pretend that one apology could make up for the 2 years of silence. Instead, I just said, I appreciate that. She nodded slowly and stood. I won't bother you again. But if you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here. After she left, I sat there staring at the cinnamon roll, untouched. That night, I opened Talia's message again. She'd said she wanted to start over and asked if there might be room for her on one of the Vermont builds. I hadn't responded for a week. Maybe longer. I read it again. I'm not proud of how I handled things. I just didn't know how to pick a side. I was scared. But you proved everyone wrong. You built something amazing. I want to learn from you. Not just because we're sisters, but because you're better at this than any of them ever were. I sat there rereading that line, because you're better at this than any of them ever were. I couldn't decide if it made me feel proud or empty. I forwarded the email to my director of site operations with a simple note: if we've got space on the Vermont team and she passes the interviews, she's in. No special treatment. He replied 3 hours later, already done. She's starting next month. Talia showed up on the job site in Middlebury, Vermont, on a crisp morning in late October. I wasn't there. On purpose. I hadn't told the team she was my sister. Not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted her to earn their respect the same way I had, through work. Not through last names. The only heads up I gave my director of site ops was this: treat her like any other new hire. If she slips, you cut her loose. I won't interfere. He nodded once. That was our deal. I got updates, of course. Quiet ones. I wasn't hovering, but I kept an eye on her progress. She started slow, shaky with tools, unsure about measurements, overwhelmed by the cold. But she showed up every day. Early. Took notes. Asked questions. Stayed late to clean up, even when no one else did. And when the framing team got short-staffed on a Tuesday, she volunteered without being asked. Hammered in 20-degree wind for 6 hours. No complaints. After 2 weeks, one of the senior builders texted me, "Your sister's legit. She's got grit." Never would have guessed she came from office stock. That made me smile in spite of myself. We didn't talk much at first. She was in Vermont. I was bouncing between Syracuse and Albany, closing new deals and reviewing contracts. But she kept working. And I kept watching from a distance, trying to untangle what I felt. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was something like thawing. Meanwhile, word about the acquisition started to spread outside our industry. It showed up on local business blogs, then in a feature in Buffalo Business First. A headline I'll never forget: from DeSone to CEO, How Nora Leeds took over the company that cut her loose. The article was fair. More than fair, actually. They told the whole story, minus the messy personal details. It mentioned my startup, our green housing model, the acquisition, and our impact. It didn't mention my father by name. But everyone knew. The morning the article dropped, I received 3 calls before 9 a.m. All from unknown numbers. I didn't answer any of them. Then an email from an old high school teacher, read your story. I always knew you'd do something big. I scrolled past it, numb. Not ungrateful, just detached. The truth is, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt unsettled. Because once the dust settled, there was nothing left to chase. And in that quiet, something else crept in. The weight of what had been lost. One night, I found myself driving past my parents' old house. The porch light was off. Leaves had gathered in the corners of the steps. The swing I helped install when I was 16 creaked in the wind. I didn't stop. Just looked. The next morning, I got a voicemail from Henry. He still worked part-time with us, mostly consulting now. He was one of the few who made the transition gracefully, loyal to the company, not just the old guard. His voice on the message was low, hesitant. Hey Nora. Just wanted to let you know, your dad's been asking about the crew reports. Not interfering. Just curious. Said he saw some photos of the Middlebury build online. Said, it looked good. I sat in my office staring at that message for a long time. My dad hadn't reached out directly. Not once. No apology. No call. Nothing to acknowledge the years of silence. But now, suddenly, he was asking about things? I wasn't sure what bothered me more, the gall or the lack of it. Still, something about it lingered. That weekend, I was in Vermont for a site check. It was the final walkthrough before the handover, 10 modular units, fully powered, insulated, and move-in ready. Our fastest turnaround yet. I pulled up in the company truck just as the sun was coming up over the hills. The sky was streaked with orange, mist still hugging the grass. The houses stood in a neat row like quiet sentinels. Clean lines, natural wood siding, metal roofs that gleamed. Talia was already there, clipboard in hand, walking the perimeter. She turned and saw me. Hesitated. Hey, I said, stepping out of the truck. She smiled carefully. Didn't think you'd come. Didn't plan to, I admitted. But it felt right. We walked the site together. Talked about insulation ratios, the new vent system, a client who wanted custom shelving. All business. Comfortable, even. Then she asked, have you talked to Mom? A few times, I said. She came by the office. She looked surprised. Did you talk? I shrugged. Kind of. Not really. We paused near the last unit, the one with the big picture window facing the trees. I think about it a lot, she said suddenly. How things fell apart. How I just froze. You were scared. I was weak. You were scared, I repeated. So was I. But I couldn't let that stop me. She looked at me, really looked. I want to be better now. I want to earn your trust back. I know, I said quietly. That's why I let you on this team. Not because you're my sister. But because I see the work you're doing. We stood in silence for a while. Eventually, I walked to the truck. Before I got in, I turned back and said, keep doing what you're doing. We'll see where it goes. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a start. Back in Syracuse, I kept my head down and focused. More contracts. More builds. We were expanding into Rochester next. A local land trust wanted to pilot 15 units on reclaimed industrial property. That was when I got the second call. Not from Henry. Not from Talia. From my father. His name popped up on the screen and I just stared at it. my breath caught in my throat. I didn't answer. He left a message. Nora. It's me. I saw the article. I've been meaning to call. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. But I'd like to talk. If you'll let me. He didn't say sorry. He didn't explain. He just wanted to talk. I sat at my desk, phone still in hand, heart hammering in my chest. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to do. I didn't call him back right away. In fact, I let that voicemail sit on my phone for 3 full days. Every time I saw his name in the recent calls list, I'd feel that old tightness in my throat again, the one I used to get every time I messed something up as a kid. Every time I had to explain myself, defend myself, beg to be heard. But this time I didn't owe him anything. Not an explanation. Not forgiveness. Not a seat at the table I built from scratch. Still, I was curious. So I called him. From a blocked number. Hello, he answered, almost too quickly. Like he'd been waiting. It's me, I said. Silence. Then, Nora. I didn't say anything else. I wanted to hear what he had to say. I wasn't sure if you'd call. You said you wanted to talk. He cleared his throat. I could tell he was nervous. My father. Nervous talking to me. I've been following the company. What you've done. I didn't expect it to work. I didn't want it to work. But it did. It's impressive. Another pause. You made it something better than I ever did. I didn't reply. I know I was hard on you. Maybe cruel. I thought I was protecting what I built. I didn't see you clearly. And now I do. You were right to walk away. You were right to build your own thing. And I was wrong. There it was. Not a sobbing apology. Not a dramatic admission. Just a quiet, beaten man saying what I always wanted to hear, you were right. I was wrong. It hit me harder than I thought it would. Not with relief, not with anger. But with clarity. I had spent so much of my life trying to prove something to him. Trying to show him I was more than what he allowed me to be. And now, finally, he saw it. Thank you, I said. Calm, controlled. I'm not asking for anything, he added quickly. I just wanted you to know. I waited a beat. I'm glad you called. We hung up not long after that. It wasn't warm. It wasn't friendly. But it was finished. That night, I sat on the porch of my apartment, sipping tea, wrapped in a thick flannel blanket, listening to the wind rush through the trees. The air was cold and clean, and for the first time in a long time, my mind was quiet. The next few months moved fast. We finished the Rochester build ahead of schedule. Haven Build was featured in an architecture journal. We signed a deal with a Boston-based green investment firm that guaranteed 3 years of funding. I was invited to speak on a panel about women in sustainable development at NYU. I almost said no. I still hated being in the spotlight. But I went. And after the event, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous, clutching a leather sketchpad to her chest. I read your story, she said. I'm studying architecture, but my parents want me to take over their real estate business. They say I'm wasting time. But your story, it gave me hope. I smiled. That's exactly what I needed to hear, too. Back then. She lit up. I gave her my card and told her to reach out anytime. And as I walked away from that event, I realized this was the real payoff. Not just owning the company. Not just watching my father eat his words. Not even the financial freedom I now had. It was this: I'd built something that helped others. That told the world women like me, daughters like me, could forge their own path. That no one got to write our stories for us. About a month later, I had lunch with Talia at a diner near the Vermont site. She'd been promoted to team lead. I have to admit, she said between bites of grilled cheese, there's a certain poetic justice to the whole thing. I grinned. You mean me buying the company after Dad said I'd never get hired again? She nodded. It's the kind of thing people make movies about. I leaned back in the booth, sipping my coffee. You know, I said, I used to fantasize about rubbing it in. About making him beg. And now? I don't need to. Because here's the thing about revenge, when it's real, it doesn't come from cruelty or pain. It comes from success. From peace. From building something so strong, so undeniable, that the people who tried to bury you are forced to watch you bloom, again and again. And they can't stop it. They can't even look away. A few months after that, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Careful cursive. It was from my dad. No threats. No apologies. Just a single sentence, you built something better than I ever could. I hope one day you'll let me see it. I read it twice. Then I put it away in a drawer. Maybe one day I'd respond. But for now? I had homes to build. And no time to waste looking back.